The idea is to kind of just talk about well-being and stuff, but I would like for everyone to maybe just, if you can just give me like an introduction, who you are and what you do for a living and stuff. That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bill Brand, and the hat I'm wearing primarily this evening, from the way I was introduced in your email and online, is as a leadership coach and an executive and business coach, which I've been doing for about the last 12, 13 years. But in addition to that, I also have other hats that I wear, which include being a singer and a musician, and also being an actor, and being a bit of a writer as well, and other things that I've done, including teaching hang gliding. Yeah, so I think that's all I need to say right now.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
My name's Steven Tart. I'm a filmmaker and a songwriter, an occasional arsehole, but not this evening.
Hi, everyone, good evening. I'm Ruth. Oh, sorry, it needs to be really close.
Yes.
I'm Ruth, known as Ramel. It's my abbreviation of my full name, Ruth Melbourne. I am a makeup artist to the stars. No, I'm joking. I have worked with celebrities. I've worked with Jessie J, I've worked with Flo Witchery, I've groomed Chris Tarrant once upon a time. I've been doing makeup for 10 years now. And I also make body jewellery for women. Lingerie accessories, I should say. It's been worn by Miley Cyrus and other people, but yeah, that's a bit of what I do and how it kind of connects with music. So yeah.
Nice. You can just do it.
So I'm Richard Mosely. Originally I actually trained as a social worker, so I was a social worker for about 24 years. I know you're thinking I look too svelte and baby-faced for that, obviously. And last year I took the plunge and I sort of left work and I decided to, I was very into graphic design, so I sort of decided to leave that and drop the graphic design, and I host events, I host a radio show. Yeah, just trying to let that creative spirit kind of sink, really. So
So, we got a bit of a late start today, unfortunately. So we don't have much time. So we're going to try to cram in as much as possible in this time. And I just want you to know that I'd love for anyone who feels that they have a question, that they have a comment, just raise your hand. I have a wireless microphone. So I'm just going to pass it around to anyone that has a question. Yes? Is that cool? Wicked. So be interactive with us, please. Right, so I'm just gonna, I kind of send them a couple of questions just in advance to get us started. It's very organic. We will take the conversation wherever it goes. Yes? Right. So, so I have asked, in relationship to what we're talking about being well-being, and what was I going to say? Yes. So we'll be touching on the importance of feeling okay mentally with where you are in your career, how not to be hard on yourself, how to pick yourself up, and feeling that there is support out there for you. So on that basis, what has been your greatest strength and your greatest weakness? And that could be personality traits, or it could be your own mental bashing, or whatever it is, or something that you're really good at and picking yourself up, or whatever. So, who wants to build? Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I suppose possibly my greatest strength comes out of my greatest weakness. So, one of the reasons I became a coach is because I like, similarly, when people go into the other aspects of caring professions like psychiatry or nursing or medicine, they often do because they themselves feel in need of care and healing. And I certainly felt that way. So I come from a, like a lot of people, difficult family environment. My father was a malignant narcissist and a thoroughly unpleasant person. And one of the things that he used to do was gaslight me. So he would deny my reality and my perception. And as a result, I grew up extremely anxious and questioning whether I in fact knew what reality was, or I could trust my senses and my perceptions. And I, concluding that in fact I couldn't. And so what could I do? Well, I had to try and figure out what the world really was like at any given moment, and try and protect myself and manage everything as best as I could. And what this did over the long term was make me very, very analytical, rational, incapable of being in touch with my feelings, my instincts, and my intuition, and becoming, in fact, almost paralyzed by a certain point in my life. And so I would describe that as my greatest weakness. So that I went from being somebody who was really quite capable of being sort of brave and courageous and in the moment when I was young, drawing on, I suppose, just what existed still of my reserves of natural life energy, to somebody who could easily become paralyzed by fear and panic. And so that was my weakness, and then I decided I needed to try and understand that and to recover from that. And in the course of study that led me through, I now use working with a whole range of people on issues that they themselves have around dealing with anxiety or fear, coping with change, understanding themselves at a deeper level, knowing what to do when they encounter huge challenges and setbacks in life. So my weakness became my greatest strength.
Yeah, you turned it around and made it your strength instead. That's really beautiful. Thank you. We want to hear more about that. It's coming.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, I mean, what you said really resonated with me, actually. A childhood sort of filled with anxiety and a need to sort of survive somehow by, at least the way I did it was just to accumulate knowledge, because to accumulate knowledge would provide me with a way to negotiate complex adult emotions that I had no way of, actually sort of, evaluating or sort of. So when you're a child and you're experiencing that, I just sucked in information, So you talk about your greatest strength, your greatest weakness. Well, in many ways now, where I am at this moment in time, my ability to suck in information and to express that, I suppose what you call a sort of sensitivity in a sense, was my Achilles heel, whereas now I feel like it's a gift and it's something that I can really use in a positive way. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, wicked.
Okay, my childhood's slightly different, but it's not a perfect family household or thing. I don't know what I'm saying.
And it doesn't have to be with childhood. It could be something now that you feel that you're struggling with, or and it doesn't have to be the same thing either. So
definitely. But I would say my greatest strength is that I'm an optimist and I'm spiritual, and that has helped a lot. I was painfully shy when I was very young, growing up. When I went to study fashion, and that's when I became a bit fearless. What would I say is my weakness? I can be very tactless. I can be very, as well with business and what I do. I'm in the industry, if you're all in it, or you know someone that is. It's a mean world. It's a fierce industry. But I've been in the industry for like 10 years, and I would say, what's my weakness? Yeah, I'm quite tactless. I can be quite closed off. But I'm a people person, and I think that's my greatest strength. I love people, I love meeting people. I don't like talking much, but hey, it's yeah. When you get to know me, I'm a bit more talkative. Yeah, I would say that's a bit of me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
think for me, one of my biggest weaknesses has been sort of defining my success, I guess, by what others think it should be. You know, I stayed in social work for quite a long time because it got to the point where that's kind of what people expected me to kind of be and to do. And I was unsure for a long time whether, you know, it was right for me, and, you know, maybe I should kind of take that leap and lead. So yeah, so even last year when I left, a lot of people couldn't quite understand it, and I guess even at that time when I'd left, and people would ask me, what are you doing? I'd say, well, I'm not really doing much. But this time I'm sort of working for myself and trying to do other things, but it just felt I was defined kind of by that role. It took me quite a long time to hear my own voice in that. And I think that that's kind of then been, what I would say kind of one of my successes has been sort of to find my own voice and to be able to kind of identify, well, what my vision is, what I see, and kind of how I'm gonna, you know, I might need that support to kind of get there, but at least I kind of have found my voice to be able to say, well, this is kind of what I want to do. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it's a lesson learned rather than what I would probably have done is thought, well, that's kind of a failure, and sort of park that to the side and probably never see it again. So I'd say kind of that's what my
Wicked. I really like the fact that I really like the fact that all of you have kind of used something that might have been a negative start or an influence, and then you've actually turned it around to something really positive. Because with these sessions, it's about creating a discussion, and it's about starting to talk about things. And hopefully you all will go to your own other social groups that you have, and you will continue the conversation. But I always want it to be positive. I always want, you know, for us to talk about how can we change things that might not be very good for us and stuff. So I would like to ask you, so there's a couple of things. We won't be able to talk about all of these things. You can kind of pick. But one thing that I find really important in about accepting yourself and your journey is, do you allow yourself to see your own success? Whoever wants to start, doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yes, so, gosh, was there somebody else who was talking about an inner voice? Was it you earlier on? Yeah, the inner critic. And so, yeah, my inner critic has a voice that sounds very much like my father's voice. And one of the things I do, and I probably sound quite insane when I'm on my own, is I say kind things to myself. And so whenever I do little things that are good for myself, I acknowledge myself first, and I say, that was a lovely thing that you did, or, you know, well done, gosh, that was amazing, you know. And it's just, well, you know, it's kind of my way of balancing what for the first part of my life was nothing but sort of very, very harsh and judgmental criticism. So yeah, so I would say that I'm having started out as somebody who had a very angry and internal critic, always angry, always harshly judgmental. I now try and notice all the good things that I do, and the paradox is that it doesn't seem to have made me any more sort of arrogant or triumphalist or anything like that. And so yeah, it's just. It's more a question of making me feel that I'm a kind of a friend to myself, if you like.
Do you think that there is something, because this is actually something that I've been thinking about quite a lot, and I know I've spoken to my female friends about this, how sometimes when I verbalize things and I say it out loud, it gets a different meaning. It's almost like there's some sort of, whether it's like, today I'm gonna get a gig, or I'm fucking awesome because I did that yesterday, or something. Do you think that there is something in just actually saying it out loud that makes a difference?
I think so. I think you can either say it out loud or you can write it down as well, but I think either saying it out loud or writing it down gives a different sort of, has a different impact on me, certainly. than if I just had a thought. So it's about being, I mean, one of the things that I firmly believe in is that we have an enormous reservoir of insight, intelligence, and energy in our unconscious mind. And that one of the ways that we draw on that and sort of become more integrated is through being in dialogue with ourselves. And so if you have that kind of a notion that there is this much larger wellspring of your own personality and character and who you are, that is not normally accessible in sort of in the traditional way of being, then by speaking aloud and by writing, it's a way of encouraging that kind of what people call an intrapsychic dialogue, where you bring what is unconscious more into conscious awareness and allow that to become more part of who you fully are.
Yeah, great, awesome.
It reminds me of something that my therapist, Bernie, who something that he suggested to me when I was sort of in a session with him. He gave me this little, it's a little Russian doll, and he said, "I want you to keep that in your pocket," or rather, "Would you like to keep that in your pocket?" Yeah, I wonder if you may be interested in.
Yeah. Doll in there.
And what he said is that there's two worlds in a sense. There's the inner world, and then there's this world in which we interact in, you know. And I'm not going to walk down the road and call you a wanker. Probably not. But I am going to walk down the road and call myself a wanker, you know. And this doll represented 7-year-old me, in a sense. This is sort of where we got to with this doll. It represented 7-year-old me. And the idea was that every time within my mind I called myself a wanker, or I put myself down, or, you know, I imagined 7-year-old Steve in front of me and me saying that to 7-year-old Steve. And what sort of human being does 7-year-old Steve become if he's constantly on the receiving end of that? And that's totally true. If you inside your mind always say those things to you, then you become that thing. It's as simple as that. So that's what it reminded me of. What's interesting to me is in schools we don't teach this sort of thing, you know? We know where fucking Poland is on the map, and that's important, okay? But what's more important, I know, actually, yeah, you're from Poland, that's where it came up. My unconscious mind working there. But we can't negotiate ourselves, or rather we're not taught to negotiate ourselves. And that is to mankind's detriment, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, that's it really.
Making sure yeah, I can hear can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so what you have said in regards to saying things aloud, I talk to myself often and I love it, and writing things down. It reminds me of a book that I read, Florence Scovel Shinn. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with her teachings. She was around the 1940s, American. And she's got a book called Your Word is Your Wand, very powerful. She's also got a book called The Game of Life and How to Play It. I think you'll all love it.
Can you please post it on the Fika Session
definitely.
feed?
Definitely will do. So that helped me a lot, and I do both those things. I work for myself, by myself, most of the time. I hand make my jewellery, and sometimes I need that encouragement, and I have to encourage myself. So I find that definitely does have a big impact.
Are you good at it?
I am. I have a book called, Book of Positive Aspects. Mm-hmm. So I write down things that I've succeeded in the week, month, things that I want to achieve, goals. I haven't looked at it this week, to be honest, but I think it's important to have something where you write, you know, this week, I don't know, I went to the gym. It could be as little as that. Or I ate good for the last, you know, or healthy for the last 3 days or something like that. It does really help. And you encourage yourself, and
yeah, and it's about encouraging even the small steps. You know, if you fall off and you don't eat healthily one day, that's just one meal. You get back on it again. You know, so it's about how you kind of perceive what you've just done. You're like, you could easily ignore that one meal, whatever you've done, that wasn't maybe to the fullest standard. And you can ask yourself, why wasn't it? Well, I was really hungover, I was really tired, I've been a bit naughty the night before, so fuck it, I deserve it. And then you move on. So yeah, Rich, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I am getting better at. I'd say, and it's interesting because I've worked, working with families and with children is something that we constantly encourage kind of people to do. But I think, much like you were saying, I think we grow up and we live in a society where to acknowledge things that you've done well kind of seems to be arrogant. If you acknowledge what you're good at, people kind of take that as an arrogance. And I think in, growing up as a kid, it very much was that where praise was something you didn't really hear. It was like, well, you're expected to kind of do that. So it's a language that, I guess I've had to learn as time's gone on. So since I've left, it is about, kind of recognising what you do. Some days I'm better than others, some days I'm just terrible. But I think it's about establishing that pattern, and that's something that I guess I'm learning, and definitely getting better at, rather than, where I was a year ago, where, people would ask me what I would do, and it was really difficult actually to take praise. Because it wasn't something, something I was able to give, but not often to receive. Yeah.
You might not have been ready to accept that yourself. Maybe you didn't think that about yourself.
Absolutely, and it's kind of that journey that, much like you when you work for yourself, and when you're looking around, it's like, well, actually, there's nobody else to kind of tell me that that this is okay. Sometimes you just have to go with that feeling that actually this is okay. That this is good. And yeah, it's definitely a language that I'm learning.
Great. So I have a bunch of questions, and I'm going to post them on the Fika Session site, and it'd be really great to hear from you what you feel, especially if you got little tips and stuff. I'm going to continue the questions, but I just want you to know that at the Facebook page there's going to be lots of interactions there. So I actually want to touch on what you said. So when you're at that point where you're like, you might not have done everything you wanted to do, or maybe you missed the deadline. I have a tendency, which is really bad, when I get a really big opportunity sometimes, when I don't think that I'm worthy enough, I procrastinate and I don't contact that person back. And then I kind of find a bad excuse, and I'm like, oh no, I was far too busy with the, cleaning the house, or no, but I really do have situations where I do that. And so what is your best tips for maybe when you're at a point and you're like, it's really rough, I need that break, I need to kind of go from that state of mind that's not very positive to kind of go, here we go, yes. How do you break that negative mind pattern when you feel that you're like, ugh? Any suggestions? And I would like to have everyone who has a little tip to join in.
For me, one of the things that I think I am quite good at is when I'm in that space, one of the things I'll do is I'll just really stop what I'm doing, and wherever I am, I'll take that 5 minutes to go out, actually outside, and just to identify and look at things that I find interesting, beautiful, or just recognizing that innate beauty that's kind of around us sometimes. Where I work, or where I used to work, there's quite a big homelessness problem, and actually just talking to people in their situations and finding out more about people, walking in the park. Those are the things that kind of, I guess, help me over that hurdle, because it's kind of recognizing that whatever's kind of going on for me, it's not the end of the world, it's not that bad. There's still beauty out there, there's still people who are overcoming difficulties in their own kind of ways, and that's kind of really what helps me sort of just get out of my own space and stop me internalizing things.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Getting perspective. Yeah.
I'm not really sure I have an answer to your question in a sense.
No, but it doesn't.
But I think there's another sort of level to this as well, which maybe we haven't sort of touched on necessarily, which is when it, what I'm trying to say, if you live a life that is sort of doused with sort of guilt and shame and anxiety, and some people sort of get out of that, and, you know, through numerous routes. But then there are many people who don't get out of that, you know. And there were moments in my life where I was at absolute rock bottom, where the beauty in the world completely disappeared, and to the extent where I considered taking my own life. And that happened to me for sort of a few years, on and off. And I just couldn't get myself out of that. And I suppose I say that because there may be people here who at different times have that experience in their life, or there may be people watching on Facebook, or whatever, who have those moments. And I think it's important to sort of address that. And what I want to say is that it doesn't feel like it in that moment, but there is help available, you know. We're talking about a spectrum ultimately.
No,
you know, there's different ways of
absolutely.
dealing with all of this, but at the sort of bottom end of the spectrum, you know, there is professional help available, but it requires a lot of courage to go
Right.
there.
So what made you go there then?
Well, it was either that or, you know,
Yeah.
popping under the ground for a sleep, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it was at that point. And I was lucky enough to have a partner who really helped me through that, and who said, you need to go and see somebody. Like, we've sort of explored everything that we can individually at this point, or rather as a couple, you know. You need, you know, there is help out of that. And it was a long negotiation out of that. It was seeing lots of different people who I thought, this is ridiculous, this isn't working. And then, hopefully, you'll come across one person who, which for me was Bernie, which was,
Yeah.
you know.
But that's also a very good point. Like, don't give up just because you're matched with someone that doesn't suit your personality or whatever.
Sure.
Keep on looking.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
I mean, I think if you're going to go and see someone, whether it's a counsellor or whether it's a psychotherapist or whatever it is, it's not, don't think, oh, this isn't fucking working, so psychotherapy doesn't work. Think that the nature of my relationship with this person here doesn't work. But also, there's also this sort of, maybe you're perfect for each other, but it's so difficult to negotiate all of these complex things that you'll just sort of shy away from it. So there's no hard and fast rules, but what I would say is for those in the absolute deepest, darkest, there is light available, you know, it is there, but you need to look for it. And, you know, in a world where we're meant to be more connected than ever, I feel in many ways we're not. You know, most of our conversations, or a great deal of our conversations, are sound bites through electronic equipment. And actually, I think being in a room with people, that's why this is great, you know, to be able to actually... Anyway, I don't want to take up all the time, but just wanted to say.
No, I think that's great. You know, and I think people that are at that lowest stage need to know whether they're at the point that you were, or whether it's just a point where they're like, there is no help, this is what it is for me.
I think it's about having a
You know.
conversation.
Yeah,
In a sense.
No,
It's about the more we talk about it and the more we make it normal,
absolutely.
the more willing people are to discuss their own demons, you know?
Yeah, and whether it's demons on that level or demons on an upper avalanche, you know, I think it's super important. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Great.
Yeah, I'd like to say a bit about that. So, say you're not. I think when one becomes lacking in resilience and resourcefulness, then and you can't really, you don't have the psychological flexibility to deal with any particular adverse circumstance that you might be in at that moment, then you know, hopefully there is somebody who says go and get some help, or you've got enough support and you're not on your own. But do whatever you can just to keep on keeping on, and at that point, and try and access as much support as you possibly can, and let people help you if they're trying to help you. But say you're not at that in extremis and at that point, but you're feeling a bit hopeless, or you're feeling down, or you're feeling defeated, or whatever. You know, how do you turn that around? And so for me, it starts with awareness, as almost everything else does, which is just noticing what's actually going on for you in terms of first of all, your feelings, and then adding to that an awareness of everything else that's going on in terms of the entire content of your experience. So what are you thinking? What are you feeling? What kind of judgments are going on? What kinds of sensations are going on in your body, all of those aspects of our experience. What kind of predictions are you making about the future? What kind of interpretations of the past are you making? What kind of behavioral predispositions are manifesting? What kind of urges are making themselves known and felt to you at that point? And so that awareness, getting into the habit of noticing that stuff, and by all means, you know, you maintaining that habit of speaking, of saying, I notice that I am feeling this way, or I notice that I'm having the thought that, or I'm noticing that I'm having the urge to, etc. So that aspect of awareness, then the next stage of that process is to fully accept all of your experience, every single aspect of your experience, because not accepting it won't change for a moment the reality that you're inhabiting at that particular point. So those are ways that you can increase your psychological flexibility in the face of whatever feelings may be going on with you at that point. Because at the moment you're having them, all you can do is accept them and then move in the direction of your values. Because you can always move in the direction of your values, no matter what your experience may be like at that particular point, even if it's a small step.
Yeah. Okay. Really good.
At the beginning of the year, it was really hard for me. I had a life-changing event. I also had health issues, so I didn't feel creative. I just didn't feel to do anything, design, put out a collection, because you know you have to be seasonal, spring, summer, autumn, winter, and I just felt, you know what, everything in divine timing. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to put a collection when I'm ready. And I just distracted myself. I've done a lot of inner work, which is what I call, what I do when I write and I vocalize. I go and spend time with my nieces and my nephews. I don't have my own children. I go to the movies, I go to the gym. I do things that make me feel good. I spend time with good energy, people that we can have fun, you know, like good vibes, friends that I can connect with. And that's kind of what I do. And then it just sort of, I honestly, I do trust the universe. Like it always just does its thing when you're more ready for it. And I think at that time I wasn't ready. I just kind of needed to do that inner work. Kind of just need to put my feelings together and just kind of feel positive. And then I had an interview, or a meeting rather, with someone from Dubai, because I always wanted my band to be in Dubai. And then I had a meeting. This girl was crazy, and I was like, oh, she's really cool. Like I would love her to stock my stuff. And then I got a stockist, and this is without putting that collection or anything throughout the year. And it was only towards the end of the year now that I'm going to put out something, and it just kind of happened. And sometimes you just need to take your time.
Yeah, very nice. I think when you go into doubt about maybe, in my case, maybe comparing, which happens very often and is very dangerous, because we could tell ourselves, it's like, well, I'm me and I do what I do, but I really found that when that happened, and I felt that I had a really difficulty in like pulling out of it, what really made me change my way was that I started really going into my craft. And I went in and I was like, okay, well, if you want to be the best, then you need to get on with things. And that really helped me to kind of, starting, studying my scales and like really listening to great music and listening to what my friends were doing and getting inspiration from other great artists and stuff, and then really kind of, okay, honing down on my craft, and that what really then got me to the next stage where I was like, I had enough inspiration to start creating again. And I really feel that all of these like amazing suggestions that you got tonight would be It'd be really great to hear from you. So, a round of applause for Rich, for Ruth, for Steven, and for Bill. And for Axel for hosting it. Thank you so much, guys. And, oh, sorry, for Wayne for helping me with the drinks. And Mirage taking photos, which you're going to see online.